The path to true emotional strength. Have you longed to become unshakable, someone immune to criticism, rejection, loss, or betrayal? Do you fantasize about the day when that silent inner anguish will finally disappear, even as you maintain a composed exterior? Perhaps you're exhausted from trying to please everyone, sustaining an image of constant strength when all you truly desire is a moment's respite from the pressure of appearing invulnerable. Here's a truth few dare to acknowledge. As long as you attempt to evade pain, it will continue to dominate you. When you try to numb yourself as protection, you remain hostage to everything around you. Hurtful words, disappointing actions, and devastating silences. This isn't weakness, it's reality for most people. Some are simply better at concealing it than others. Carl Jung, a pioneer in depth psychology, taught that we aren't defined by what happens to us, but by what we choose to become. The key isn't shielding yourself from the world or becoming cold and indifferent. Rather, it's about integration, bringing to light everything that affects you in darkness. True strength isn't the absence of pain, but complete self-awareness, even in your most vulnerable moments. If you've reached this far, it's not coincidental. This message is for those tired of being wounded by everything and everyone, for those who feel perpetually at an emotional disadvantage, as if others possess some power over you that you can't comprehend. Things don't have to remain this way, but you'll need to confront some uncomfortable truths that, paradoxically, may finally liberate. The source of pain. You believe your pain originates externally in others' actions, poorly chosen words, abandonments, or unexpected betrayals. The brutal truth is that none of these truly has the power to hurt you unless they activate an existing wound within you. What hurts isn't what others do to you, but what these experiences trigger inside. The stories you tell yourself, unaddressed traumas, and emptiness disguised as strength, pride, or a desperate need to appear well-adjusted. Jung reveals that external pain merely reflects what hasn't been integrated into our internal world. This explains why some people endure devastating circumstances while maintaining clarity, while others crumble from a simple comment. It's not about what happens, but where it hits you. Here's an uncomfortable truth. You continue suffering because on some level, you believe you can control how the world treats you. You strive to be good enough, smart enough, strong enough, or understanding enough, as if that guarantees protection from pain. But control is illusory, and clinging to it keeps you in constant tension, trying to predict the unpredictable and avoid the inevitable. To stop suffering, stop protecting yourself from suffering. You need awareness, not control. As long as you believe others must change for your pain to stop, you remain enslaved by their actions. Your freedom begins when you understand that external factors only have power if they resonate within you. This is where the true battlefield lies, in the unconscious. What you don't see, understand, or master ends up mastering you. The power of the unconscious. The greatest deception you've believed is that you control your life. You don't, at least not while living on autopilot, reacting without understanding why, feeling without knowing the source, making decisions you later sabotage. Jung stated that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you'll call it fate. That's precisely what's happening to you now. The pain, unexplained anger, and invasive sadness aren't random. They're messages from forgotten, ignored, or repressed parts of yourself. Jung referred to this territory as the unconscious. Not just vague thoughts, but an active force, a system of memories, traumas, desires, and fears you avoid facing, yet which continue determining what you feel and how you act. Certain words devastate you, while others remain unaffected, because those words touch sensitive points still alive within you. Points you've never confronted but merely pushed under the psychological rug, only to keep tripping over them. Jung said we cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation doesn't liberate but oppresses. Yet you've been judging, repressing, and silencing yourself as if that would solve anything. The truth is that the unconscious doesn't vanish when ignored. It finds more dangerous ways to manifest in repeated toxic relationships, patterns of self-sabotage, and anxieties arising when everything seems well. This isn't bad luck. but your unconscious trying to awaken you while you insist on sleeping. If you want to become someone who can't be hurt, stop running from what's inside you. As long as you don't know you're unconscious, you'll remain a puppet of your emotions. The more you try protecting yourself from external pain, the more vulnerable you become to internal pain. The way forward isn't defending yourself, but integrating yourself. Becoming unshakable isn't an act of resistance, but of profound self-knowledge. The myth of emotional armor. Most believe avoiding hurt requires closing themselves off. They build walls, create masks, develop emotional armor, and pretend nothing affects them. They claim indifference while continuing to bleed inside because the problem was never about feeling, but not knowing what they feel and why, which only happens to those who don't know themselves. Jung stated that while you should know all theories and master all techniques, when touching a human soul, be just another human soul. Yet the human soul you hide behind a strong, invulnerable, controlled character is screaming to be seen. Emotional strength has nothing to do with coldness, ignoring pain, avoiding conflict, or pretending not to care. It's about integration, accepting and illuminating everything buried in darkness. You don't become unshakable by creating barriers between yourself and the world, but by realizing no one can touch what you've already embraced within yourself. When you integrate your shadows, fears, flaws, and insecurities, you stop reacting to everything. You choose. You're no longer an emotional puppet, and that's true freedom. Jung called this individuation, becoming who you really are, not what others expect or what you thought necessary for acceptance, but what emerges from within, from the meeting of light and shadow, ego and unconscious. Individuation isn't about perfection, but integration. You don't need to become better, just whole. The secret no one told you. The more you run from pain, the more it chases you. The more you try not to be affected, the more fragile you become. But when you face your wounds and accept yourself, beautiful and ugly, noble and shameful, nothing external can dismantle you. This path requires courage. Courage to look within, abandon masks, and feel. Because within pain lies the key to transformation. The purpose of pain. Since childhood, you learned to hate pain. You were taught suffering indicates weakness, crying, wastes time, and feeling too much makes you vulnerable. So you began running, avoiding, denying. But the more you flee suffering, the more it pursues you, changing form, disguising itself as anxiety, anger, apathy, boredom, and self-destructive impulses whose origins you don't understand. Ignored pain doesn't disappear, it tunnels inside until one day, without warning, everything collapses. Jung viewed suffering differently, as the soul's messenger, the unconscious mind's alarm, the language your complete self uses to get your attention. He said depression is like a woman in black. If she appears, don't push her away. Invite her to sit, offer coffee, and listen to what she says. But you don't listen. You silence, distract, busy, and numb yourself, doing everything to avoid confronting what matters. What is this pain trying to show you? Suffering only hurts so intensely because you're at war with yourself. Part of you wanting growth, another wanting everything unchanged. Something inside cries for transformation, while your ego, accustomed to control, tries suppressing that call. Pain emerges from this friction because change hurts, growth hurts. Letting go of old beliefs, cutting toxic ties, allowing what no longer serves you to die. All this represents mourning, an internal process of death and rebirth. Yet in this ruined space, something new can emerge. When everything is deconstructed, certainties crumble, and pain exposes your vulnerability, you finally see who you truly are, without protective layers, performance, or masks. At this precise point, suffering becomes sacred because it brings you to your knees before the only thing that can free you, yourself. Jung recognized this, understanding that suffering isn't a system failure, but part of the process. Pain isn't the journey's end, but its beginning toward individuation. Most people surrender before crossing that dark valley. They flee, distract themselves, return to the surface. But not you. If you've come this far, you're ready to cross. The journey of individuation. Few have the courage to begin the individuation journey, and fewer still complete it. This path offers no comfort, guarantees, or ego protection. It destroys it. Jung described individuation as becoming who you are, which primarily means unlearning what you think you are. This hurts more than any external rejection because you realize much of what defined you was illusory. You are not your achievements, traumas, or the image constructed to be loved, respected, or admired. These were survival mechanisms, but surviving isn't living, and individuation is life's call beyond survival. When the unconscious pushes everything repressed, hidden, and distorted to the surface. Individuation requires dissolving the persona, which Jung called merely a mask of collective convenience. You must tear off your own skin to discover what lies beneath. In this process, you begin becoming unshakable, not because nothing affects you anymore, but because you've already walked through fire. You've faced your monsters, looked into the eyes of your shame, neediness, and anger, and said, "I see you, and you no longer control me." This internal clarity facing your own darkness gives you strength independent of approval, recognition, or control. You no longer need universal love, winning every argument, or appearing strong because you know who you are, and no one can take that away. True emotional armor isn't a shell, but a core, integrating all parts into a consciousness center that remains steady amid storms. You may feel pain, but it doesn't break you. You may be hurt, but don't lose yourself because you've stopped being reactive and become whole, stopped living superficially, and begun inhabiting the depths. This depth comes at a price: loneliness. Not because you'll be alone, but because few can accompany you on this journey. Most remain trapped on the surface, in masks, afraid of feeling. When you free yourself, you inevitably distance yourself. This distancing isn't rejection, but maturation. You distance yourself not from pride, but because you no longer fit where you once hid. Consciousness as the ultimate shield. Having come this far, understand clearly, nothing will shield you from external suffering if you remain unconscious of your internal processes. Words will continue hurting, rejection stinging, and losses bringing you down until you awaken. Awakening isn't magical, but a daily choice. Looking inward even when painful, taking responsibility for your feelings without blaming others, the past, or fate. Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." You've spent your life resisting the fear of inadequacy, rejection's emptiness, loneliness, and the anguish of invisibility. But what did you do with that? You hid, silenced yourself, tried controlling everything, attempted perfection and strength. All this has brought you here, exhausted from fighting the world and yourself. Now you know, true emotional immunity isn't hardness, but clarity, not armor, but expanded awareness. When you understand your triggers, patterns, and wounds, others' actions lose their destructive power. You still feel but don't drown. You still suffer but don't lose yourself. What shields you isn't protection from life, but diving deeply into it. Those living on the surface get hurt by any wave. Those who dive know there's silence, stability, and power below. That's where you're headed. When you live from integration, presence, and acceptance, the world may try knocking you down, but no longer finds where to hit you. If something within you has awakened, write in the comments. I choose awareness. Let's start a movement of people who no longer want to survive by pretending strength, but to live authentically. Don't forget, the next video continues this journey. Real transformation only begins when you don't stop at the first step.